So this is a fairly sort of light-hearted presentation about the work we're doing. I'm Simon Mabey, founder of Digital Urban. So within the UK, we have just as many people living in towns and villages as we do cities. So we're keen to make sure that digital twins are accessible, and that the 3D models for planning is really the start of local authorities' journey towards building a digital twin. And if they're using a digital twin as part of their planning process, it's the consultation process, the human in the loop for a digital twin. So my journey started back in the late 80s when I was sticking perspectives onto photographs. The method I use for this to ensure accuracy is still in use today. It's known as verified visualization. I then started doing what we call project modeling. And our Unix workstations cost many tens of thousands, and I was working in parallel with the project team, and my job was to find clashes in the information earlier than normal. I was very tight with my naming conventions, both with the objects and the variables embedded within the parametrics, and this then created opportunities to integrate other data like construction dates. I started to think about cities. I constantly had people looking over my shoulder, looking at the computer screen. And following the terrorist bomb in Manchester, I was commissioned to start building up a city model, combining all the CAD information from the various design teams and using this to show citizens how the redeveloped area would look. And I realized that these digital models were a great canvas for presenting other engineered data sets, and started using gaming engines for this work, something I called engineering games. So a few simple examples of the sorts of things that we're doing with gaming engines, taking the output from a micro simulation model with all the attributes like vehicle IDs, XYZs for vehicle position, and using that data to embed the 3D object within the city model. Essentially, it's 4D objects. And doing something similar with flood models, taking the output from a flood modeling, and again using that to integrate the information into our sort of wider urban models, so people start to sort of visualize and understand that information more easily. And you can also color code the geometry within the models. In this example, the road geometry is showing air quality, the buildings showing energy consumption, and it's simply painted by numbers. Or you can project things onto the surfaces of the models. This is showing breakout noise from a building, so essentially a noise map. Or you can integrate 3D geometry and color code it, and that in itself is a useful tool for people to understand the impact of changes and why those decisions are being made. Today we have lots of different methodologies for building out the foundation of a digital urban twin, and our objective is to create an open, interoperable digital model. The models are owned by the local authority. It's their asset that they can use going forward. And a few examples of the methodologies are using point cloud data or laser scanning, converting that into an optimized surface model, texturing that with photography, and then embedding that within a games engine so you can change the weather, change time of day, and run around the model as a pedestrian. For Watford Borough Council, their journey started with airborne data capture, blue line being the flight path of the plane, capturing a series of high resolution aerial photography, building up a series of jigsaw pieces, and then sharing that data with design teams so that they can simply clear sites and insert their BIM models. And this process keeps the model up to date through collaboration. It's very much a collaborative asset that everybody can make use of. Immersive technologies continue to develop over the last decade, and in this example we have Joseph Paxton standing on the balcony looking at his building that was blown up in 1920 by dynamite. And immersive technology itself is something which is really accessible and engaging for all demographics. It always attracts a crowd, and especially if you create a multi-sensory group experience using vibrations, breeze and scent. This little device down here is creating all the vibrations, and a fan in the corner there is sort of helping to create an experience. And the feedback is always really positive and people really get engaged with it. I want to have conversations with you. So we started to use immersive experience for design consultation. So this is an example. We always try and make it very physical, so people actually have to physically move through the space. And over the last year, we've had the opportunity to do immersive consultation for a number of planning projects funded by DILUC. So these are a few images of the sorts of installations that we've been doing. And again, it's collecting real measurable feedback from people about, whether they, what their feelings are about those changes that are being implemented, but in quite a playful way. And we find that we get a really representative of the engagement is representative of the national demographic. And so we think that the immersive technology is really part of the planning consultation, and it's the human in the loop for a digital urban twin. And what we've also found from the feedback is it really has a positive impact on behavioural change. That people say they didn't just offer their opinions, but they also suggest that they would be willing to do something differently if those interventions happened. And I think that's something that's really positive that comes out of actually engaging with people in these ways with a digital twin and helping them all to make more informed choices about what's good or bad for a city or place. Okay, so that was a brief sort of run through of what we've been doing in helping local authorities build up and start their journey with the digital twin, and how we can then use that as part of the engagement process for public consultation.
Our first question, Simon, is for yourself here. Simon, can you give an example of where immersive feedback has made a notable change to a proposal?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few examples I can give. The work we did with Network Rail on Hub Station, the fact that people were actually able to test out the station, they were really engaged with the proposal. And even though the design had gone through all the design processes, at the end of it, I think Network Rail were really surprised at the richness of the feedback that people gave about the design. And as a result, they did make changes to the design from people actually testing it out as a pedestrian. So that was something that was really positive. And again, when we sort of put these models together, even the design teams start to make changes. When we're doing the cycle routes in Watford, the proposals to a junction that they were making, they decided that actually the interventions wasn't worthwhile, and they flipped it back to pretty much how it was originally. So it was great that they sort of decided not to do the design intervention, even though once they'd seen it in the model. Heights of buildings is always something that people fear, and when they start to walk around the streets as a pedestrian, they tend to see that actually it isn't quite as bad as they perceive. So that always comes across. Densities of things, people fear that, and as soon as they start to walk around the streets and see the design through their own eyes, they tend to sort of alleviate some of those sort of fears.
Great, thank you. And the next question for yourself again, Simon, if I may, is are you seeing local authorities using this digital twin data to plan the impact of a construction site, such as tower cranes, or is this data mainly used to showcase the finished product?
Yeah, I mean, we tend not to try and just showcase the finished product. I think what we're trying to do is actually get people involved in some of the decision making. So it's never a case of saying, this is what you're going to get, what do you think? But actually trying to sort of take them on the journey that you've gone through with the design itself. Sometimes we'll do work with local schools and get them to develop the design, and then that will be taken out as part of the consultation, just so that people start to sort of see where the design can be taken before they get a design team involved. We haven't really done work where we're sort of showing cranes and construction stuff. That doesn't tend to be what we get involved in.
Our next question I'm going to ask to both of you, actually, if that's okay, is what are the biggest problems that you have found with integrating data from different data sources? And Simon?
I think I mean, there's a few challenges we have. Often it's alignment. Sometimes the micro sort of simulation models, the engineers won't always be that exact with their traffic modeling. So when you sort of integrate them with a with a sort of 3D urban digital twin, you often find that cars are running over pedestrians and things like that because they're not quite aligned as accurately as they should be. With the example I showed for the airport Europeus terminal, the construction data, the project manager swapped halfway through, and he had a completely different naming convention to the way that he was producing his data. So all the scripts we had written to sort of ingest all this data automatically then stopped working because he had a different way of doing things. So, you know, what we do try and do is try and lock people down quite early on so that we know that things aren't going to change later on. And if we invest time and effort into making things happen efficiently, you know, they don't get wasted. So it's always trying to sort of lock down people into having a pretty rigorous approach in the way that they work.
Brilliant, thank you. Simon, question for yourself, please. Is great 3D models derived from 3D airborne capture? How automated is the model creation? Is there some handcrafting on building of the models required?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. There's some process that we can automate. There's others that are very much handcrafted. You know, we're developing tools and techniques all the time to do it more efficiently, but it's definitely a human in the loop approach that we take with building up these models.
Good. And our probably final question here is the images of immersive feedback show only HMD, VR, so Meta Quest, etc. Have you had any issues with the HTC and body trackers to control the avatar in the environment?
We've not really got into using that. I've done projects in the past where we've used the kinetic body trackers and skeletons and things like that, and that was quite good fun. Not always very reliable, but no, we tend to sort of keep it simple when we're working with the public. Usually we've got a queue of sort of 20 people, so we don't want to sort of fall into, you know, we've got to try and keep it as robust and reliable as possible. So I'm afraid I've not got much experience of using that.